Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for understanding the date change. We're glad you're all here. We're just going to wait a couple minutes to have everybody come on because I have a feeling we're going to have a bunch today. But while we are waiting, my question is, what is something you do for your staff, something nice that you do for your staff? Like when I was a director, I would mail a little card out to my staff every week. I would alternate who I would send the card out and tell them what I appreciate about them and what I really enjoyed that they do at the center and that I value them. So anybody got something different? Also quiet every time. Oh, hey,
I
Christy.
will. So
Thank you.
we do these little teacher dollars, and they all have different amounts on them, and we call them Starbucks. And so we like buy chips, candy, a bunch of different snacks, where we do a half-hour paid break, but they can use their Starbucks dollars to pay for like an hour break or to buy snacks or to get gift cards or to enter a raffle that we do every 6 months. They can win $100 real cash for that. So if they work, our teachers work 4 10-hour days. So if they work their extra day off, like if we need someone, if we're really short, or if they stay late, so anything above and beyond, if when we do a fire drill, if they do it all the right way, like anything like that, we just give them different dollar amounts for it, and then they can buy different things.
I love it.
So it's
Great.
nice. They like it.
Yeah. I bet. Good incentives.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to share before I hand it over? Well, Christy, I really appreciate you volunteering all that information. That's great. So others can know different things. Ooh, got a hand raised. Go ahead, Charlotte.
So we don't have a big center, so we have a lot of staff. We have a large license, so we have 2 to 3 staff members, including myself. But I always, in our newsletters, always recognize our staff, as well as all my families and my students. So there's a special recognition on the bottom of my newsletters that we give recognition. However, once a year, I give kind of handmade vouchers to my clients for free date nights, so they can go do one night. So we'll pick a night and they'll have a voucher to utilize free childcare for shopping, for wrapping presents, stuff like that. As far as for my staff, I think he's still rewarded all year round. So
Love it. Perfect. Thank you, Charlotte. I appreciate it. All righty. Well, it's kind of quiet on the people coming in, so I will hand it over. I'm going to hand it to Mary Foster, and they will go ahead with the whole that's here. There's a lot of licensors on here, so it'll be great for you all to get to know all of them.
Well, thank you. So we're going to just kind of talk about some questions that some of you sent in today, or I guess the last 3 weeks you sent them in. We're going to answer some of the questions, and then at the end we'll have time for extra questions. If you have extra questions, or you're welcome to put them in the chats. So there's 5 of us on today. So Susan, if you want to start the PowerPoint and we can start introductions, we'll start that way, and then we'll answer these questions.
Oh, do you want to go?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and introduce myself first. I'm Mary Foster. I'm a licensing specialist. I've been a licensing specialist now for about 7 years. And I have part of Thornton, the 80241 area code. I have part of Aurora. Strasburg, Bennett, and part of 80221, which is Denver, but it's Adams County.
Pass
Susan,
it off to who you want to talk next.
it's you. We'll just go down the line.
Okay. My name is Susan Flood, and I'm a lead licensing specialist in Adams County. I primarily work in Thornton. And Kathleen, do you want to go next?
I can. So my name's Kathleen Zucchino, and I'm a licensing specialist in Adams County. I have several different cities, Brighton, Thornton, Westminster, North Glen. There's one other, I can't think of it, but yeah, I've been a specialist for 7 years. So Nicole, do you want to go?
Sure. I'm Nicole Bennett, and I've been a specialist for 14 years, but took 5 years off, so I just came back. I have for Adams County, because I have Adams and Weld, but I do have Commerce City and Henderson for Adams County. I think that's at Erie's, Weld. Yeah. So yeah, just that little Commerce City pocket and Henderson pocket is what I have.
So Sarah and Simone are not with us today, but Brittany, you can go ahead.
Hi, I'm Brittany. I have Adams and Jefferson County. In Adams, I have Westminster. So that's the only city in Adams I work out of.
Many of you are aware that there have been many changes to rules. The rules have changed in December 18th. Rules became in effect for general rules. So you'll want to make sure you have the updated for center rules. And then home rules, there's a new packet that has been proposed and it has been adopted, but it will not be in effect until March 16th. So we're not discussing those rules today because they're not in effect yet, but we are discussing the new changes for general and centers here today. You can always get the official rule set from the Secretary of State website, and that website is here listed for you. And then also our office will print the print-friendly rules on our webpage, on the CDEC webpage. So just make sure when you download the rule set from the Secretary of State, you are downloading all the rule set for that department. Make sure that you are only going to the rules that pertain to your licensing type. There's a question about, has the rule changed allowing 2 children under the 18 months for family child care homes? Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I just need to move some things out of my way. Instead of 24 months. So that has been proposed and adopted, but it is not in effect yet until March 16th. Now, however, I can go back onto the website and go to the waiver, but I didn't write down this date before I came. There's currently a statewide waiver in effect for family child care homes that will allow 2 children under 18 months instead of 2 years. So this is kind of a tricky question just because we're in the middle of changes happening. So the direct question, has the rule changed? Yes, but it's not in effect. However, there is a waiver, statewide waiver that has been granted. You do not need to request it. It's been granted across the state for every family child care home. Is that clear to everybody? Does anybody have, there's been a lot of questions about this, so I want to make sure everybody understands the
The rule-
difference here.
Susan, Flood, the rules just changing just for the age of the 202, right? It's just going to be 2 under 18 months.
Correct, but
Okay.
the actual rule change, though officially, it's not being changed until
March.
March 16th, right? When those rules go into effect. However, there's been a waiver in effect for everybody across the state. You do not need to apply for it. It's been granted across the state. So in effect, it is still, you can have 2 children under 18 months as a family child care home provider. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. I think those were my slides.
I think that Kathleen, you're up next.
All right, I had to unmute. So review policies and procedures yearly. So it is in rule that you need to review your policies and procedures every year. And parents don't have to sign that every year unless you have made a change. If you make a change in your policies and procedures, you must make your parents aware and have them re-sign. Staff and child files, you need to keep those updated and you need to keep copies of those, whether it's an electronic file or it's an paper file, but those have to be kept updated. And staff professional training hours, I think the question was if where to get the training hours, but I'm not sure what the question is on that. But I go from visit to visit. But I look at the training hours, and if they are more than a year old, I don't count them. And the places that you can get extra training hours besides PDIS, that is food programs, you can get training hours through ECPAC and through Red Rocks. And the phone number for training at Red Rocks is 303-914-6307. Were there any questions? I don't know if I covered what everybody was looking for on policies, procedures, staff files, child files, and training hours. But if you have any questions, please let me know.
So Kathleen, hasn't it always been for the policies and procedures for ongoing training within 12 months?
Yeah, this
Okay.
isn't new.
Okay,
This
that's why
isn't new.
I was like, hasn't that always been that way? I thought there was
Yeah.
a change. Okay.
Somebody asked the question about professional training hours, and I just want to make it clear that once it's past a year old, it doesn't count anymore as far as the additional training hours.
Let me provide some clarification on that.
Okay.
For home family child cares, you should be going from sticker date to sticker date. So if you're licensed in January of 2023, you have from your license to your next year for your professional training. If you're a center and you have staff that you're hiring throughout the year, you will make the determination of whether you want your training to be done annually or the start of your program year, which is typically in August. And then it's from year to year for that. The first year when you hire somebody, they have a full year to complete their 15 hours of training. So centers and homes are handled a little bit differently. So the answer depends on what type of license type you are. But for homes, you did your 15 hours when you got pre-trained, and then every year going forward, you should have 15 hours of training. We usually look a year in arrears because we may come in June, but your license was in January. So we're always typically looking a year in arrears for compliance because you may be in the middle of a current year to do your annual training. Does that make sense to everybody?
Looks like Rosemary's hand is up and she had a question.
What documents have to be re-signed every year by the parents or guardian?
Kathleen, do you want to answer that?
The documents that, well, they have to redo the enrollment record and the all of the authorizations.
So again, they don't have to redo the enrollment record. They need to review it and make sure that there are not any changes. And if there's any changes, then they need to make those changes. And they have to sign off that they've reviewed it and updated and re-sign. But they don't have to physically complete a whole new enrollment record every year. They just have to review and update and make any necessary changes so you're always current, and you have to have documentation that they've reviewed and updated it. So the devil is kind of in the details.
So what kind of documentation do I need that they have reviewed it?
So
If they made no changes.
you can handle that the way you want to handle that. If you're going to make them fill out a whole new enrollment form, then
Yeah.
that's going to be your documentation.
Right.
Or you can have a statement, I've reviewed my enrollment form and everything is accurate and up to date. Sign it and date it.
They sign it and date it.
They sign it and date it because they have to review it, and you need to show proof that they've reviewed and updated and made any necessary changes as needed.
All righty, thank you.
You're welcome.
I wanted to say that I think a big one that sometimes is missed is that emergency medical treatment. So that has to be signed every year too, that the parent gives you permission to seek medical treatment if there's an emergency. And I see a lot of those missed every year. So you have to have those signed every year.
I think we can move on. Susan, can you switch the page?
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Sorry, I was waiting for you to do it, and I apologize, you guys.
No problem. So one of the questions that came in, I'm sorry?
Mary, are you on your phone and on there's feedback?
No, somebody must. Can you hear me okay now?
You're good.
Okay. So there were some questions about keep out of reach of children items. Some of the things that come up, and they come up a lot, is hand sanitizer. If you have hand sanitizer, it needs to be made inaccessible to children. When the parents come in, if they want to use the hand sanitizer, if you want to have it on a shelf that's up high enough that it's out of the reach of children, that's fine. But when the children are signed in, they are not allowed to have access to hand sanitizer. So we need to make sure we keep that up and out of the way, so that the children can't get it. As far as adult scissors, that's one of the things that comes up a lot. Teachers will be using the scissors, leave them on the table to go handle something else. Whenever you're using teacher scissors, they need to be with you at all times. You can't leave them sitting on the table and making them accessible to the children. And it did come up about first aid kits. If you have scissors and gauze in your first aid kit, you just need to make sure that your first aid kits are also kept up and are not accessible to children at all times. If you're taking them outside with you, then you need to make sure that you have a hold of them, that they're not left laying on the ground for, whoever to come by, or hanging on the fence. I see that a lot when I go out, that they have their first aid bags hanging on the fence, and they might have something in it that's not appropriate for children to have. And then for chokables, so chokables comes into effect for children under the age of 3. So if you have a preschool classroom or you're a home provider, you might have children mixed, like 2.5 to 3-year-olds or 2.5 to 5-year-olds. At that time, all chokables need to be removed from the shelves in the classrooms and made so that the children don't have access to those chokables. And if you're a home provider, you need to make sure that any chokables, when you have younger children, need to be put up. You can use them, but it needs to be more of a teacher or provider directed activity. Questions on any of that?
And I'll just point out, these aren't all the keep out of reach of children items.
No,
These were
these are
just
the ones.
questions people had about these particular things.
I just want to clarify on hand sanitizer. Sorry, Brittany, I know you put it in there, but teachers can give it to the kids as well to use.
Teachers can put it on the children's hands as long as the teacher's with them. It just can't be in reach of children if you're not around. So if it's down and a child can get it, that's when you need to worry. But if a teacher or a parent is putting it on their hands and the children are wiping it on their hands in the presence of the teacher or a parent, then that is okay.
Just a heads up.
There's an
Health
age
department
limit to-
doesn't like them either.
There's
They
an
get to
age
kids.
limit to that, though.
Okay.
See.
Just want to
Okay.
make sure we're clear. I don't want to confuse everybody. Sorry.
Yeah, a lot of times the parents, when they're picking up their children, they'll walk out of the building and there's hand sanitizer by the office, or a home provider might have it by the front door, and they'll put it on their children. And that's okay for them to do that, but that's once the children are with their parents. Okay, I guess we can move on, Susan.
I'm going over this one. So the question was, can bottles be labeled with first and last names? I believe in centers, this is a health department rule. They should be labeled with first and last name so that they don't accidentally get mixed up. In homes, I mean, I guess it depends on how many babies you have. It's a good idea. There's nothing that says you can't. It's best probably if you do. So I don't know if there was any more to that question. And then the question about rugs being placed under the hand sinks. I'm not sure what that's about. I mean, I think it helps if there's water and kids are slipping and falling because it's spillage, that, yeah, let's put a rug there or put some kind of mat there so kids aren't falling and it's not like a slipping hazard. But in the same time that they can mold and things like that too. So you have to make sure that they're being washed or, replaced often. I don't know if there was any more to that question or anybody has anything else with that.
I know who sent it, so I can kind of guess
Okay.
the question that she's trying to ask. So I think she wants to make sure that you guys are allowed to have those under the sinks in case it's like a slip hazard or fall hazard, and then does it need to be washed every week like the health department wants, all soft, and everybody's, and you guys too. Sorry, I forget you guys have that as well, since I haven't been in the classrooms as much, but do those need to be washable so they're washed every week as well for the laundry date?
And I don't know what health department would say as far as that goes for the rugs, but I mean, it's probably a good idea if it looks like it's starting to mold or be dirty. I would say yes, definitely wash them. We would cite that, but I think the health department, they may have something on how often. If it says rugs, washable rugs, I'm not sure. So I'm guessing this is a center instead of a home, but
Yeah.
okay.
Sorry, I know it was an odd question, but I was like, I want to know too now.
Oh, so I see someone's asking about the date for the bottles. I think that's health department as well, that especially breast milk, it needs to be dated, or I think they need to be made within so many hours. And so it should be dated, so that we know it's fresh, or when they've taken it out of the freezer, if it's breast milk or whatever, when they made the bottle, if you're not making them at the center.
Christy, we had health department on here a few months ago and they did cover this. And they said that they need to have the date of when it was expressed and put into that fridge that you guys have, because it's not supposed to stay overnight. So then you know what date that milk was made. And if you want more information of the health one, we have a video of it too, a recording, and I can send it to you.
Is that for both centers and home providers for breast milk?
So can I add some clarification here? So one, just so you guys understand, it's not our role to answer health department rules. So we will always defer to the health department. So this isn't our role to answer these. These are not addressed in licensing. So if you have these questions, you should ask these questions to the health department. And then Charlotte, home rules, the health department does not regulate home rules or homes. So this does not pertain to you guys, to childcare homes. Nicole, can I move to the next slide?
Yeah. Okay, so I don't know the answer to this. I was trying to figure it out. So I don't know, Susan, do you know the answer? If a program is currently UPK or has a high rating at QRS rating 3, 4, or 5, and if they find themselves on probation or with negative licensing action, what happens?
So this is kind of I think a loaded question, asking kind of multiple things. So I'm just going to address the QRIS and licensing issue part of it, because it's combining 3 different things, and I'm really not sure where they're going in this combined question. But the one thing I can answer is, if you are on probation or have another negative action with licensing, your rating is, for a lack of better word, and I'm sure there probably is a better word for it, suspended. It's like on hold. You can't get a quality rating during a license when you're on probation. So until I have more information about what this question is really trying to get at, I can't answer it. UPK, licensing and UPK are 2 different programs, right? So if you have UPK questions, again, we have to be really careful as licensing specialists not to tread on other people's authority. So if you have UPK questions, I would ask that of your LOC to answer any UPK questions, because UPK stuff is not our authority as licensing specialists. Whoever had this question, did I answer your question, or can you give me more specifics? Did that help, or did that create more questions? I just want to direct you guys to the right person to ask to get the aesthetic answer, even if I may or may not know the answer, because it's, again, we have to be careful not to tread on other people's authority. Amanda, do you know anything that can help chime in on that, or do you
That
think
one,
I addressed it?
I think so. I don't know, can't remember who sent it, to be honest with you. They might not even be on the call today because
Okay. Well,
for whatever reason. So
if I brought up any other questions, or if what I've said doesn't or does make sense, please let me know. And I'll try to clarify either way. And feel free as licensing specialist to chime in if you think I haven't clarified that well. Nicole, are we ready to go to the next one?
I think so. Am I doing the next one too?
No, that's me.
I was like, I can keep going if you want me to.
So there was some questions about group leader qualifications. I'm assuming this is for centers, is what they're asking. So there's like 9 different pathways to be group leader qualified. So what I would suggest is that you look at the rules for that, and the new rule number for the centers is 2.216, and then there's a whole list of different qualifications for teachers. And it kind of asked who can be left alone with the children. So it needs to be a group lead qualified person that can
Wait, group lead is no longer a term we use.
yes, a lead, a qualified
Early child teacher.
Yes. And so what they need to do is make sure that they're qualified. They can be left alone with the children. And then there also is a time period when an assistant teacher, which there's qualification as to what a lead teacher or assistant teacher is, and they can also be left alone with the children at certain times during the day. So you'll need to read that. It's 2 hours after opening, 2 hours before closing, and an hour during the middle of the day, like for nap time. And then to also be left alone with the children when it comes to background checks. So there are 3 different background checks. They need to have all of those to be left alone, but they can be in a classroom with only one background check that has been completed. And that means that you have received the paperwork showing that they have been cleared on that. So if they have at least one, they could be in a classroom with the children, but they have to be with another person that has all 3 background checks. Did that answer the questions that people were asking about that? No questions?
Mary, I'll just add a question.
Okay.
Just because you're on the topic of early childhood teacher, I know recently we've had a lot of outreach in regards to the use of that affidavit, waiting for credentials to be reviewed. I understand that it expired at the end of December, so maybe if you could just speak to that a little bit more, it might be helpful. Because
Okay.
we do receive a lot of questions about that.
So it has expired. It did expire at the end of the year. So part of when you filled out the affidavit, it did say that you needed to send in your professional credentials, upload all that information into PDIS. And from what we've heard from PDIS, they are caught up on all of those. That's why the waiver is no longer in effect. They can still go with the process and upload all that information into PDIS, but we would have to have a professional credential now at this point for those people to show that they are a level 2.
Thank you.
So when it comes to license capacity and ages, so the question came in that if a classroom was licensed for a certain number of children, like it was a preschool classroom and it was licensed for 20 children, could they go ahead and have 24 children in that classroom, if the ages were 4 and up? So based on when you were licensed and what the license states is the capacity in that classroom, you cannot do anything different as far as like increasing the capacity without asking for a change in capacity for that classroom. So you need to look back or ask your licensing specialist if they can research and find out exactly what that room was licensed for. It may have been licensed for 24 children, but you currently have it posted as for 20 children. So you need to just find out what was actually licensed for. So you can't change the age or the capacity in a classroom without making a change, requesting a change. And for outside is based on, if the playground is big enough, it would be based on group size rather than capacity. So for instance, if they had, they could have 20 preschoolers out there because that's the group size for preschools that are 3 and up. So you can't have more just because the playground is larger unless you divide those groups up outside. You may have a playground that's large enough to have one group on one side of the playground and another group on the other side of the playground, and that's fine, but you have to have some way to keep those groups separate from each other. Questions on that?
Looks like
Anything?
Christy has one. Oh, sorry.
So I do have a question. So we had a teacher that was employed here. She left less than 180 days ago. So I filled out the little paper and faxed it over. If we haven't gotten that back yet, she left like September. But if we haven't gotten that back yet, is she still okay to be back alone in the classroom? She is ECE qualified.
Okay, I didn't hear the first part of your question.
So we had an employee here. She left in September, so it's been less than the 180 days. And so I filled out the paper and faxed it over to see if she needed to be background, because her background check and her fingerprint are less than 5 years. So we haven't gotten the fax back or any information back. So she's my bathroom breaker. Can she do bathroom breaks and be alone in the classroom, or I have to wait until I get a paper back?
Susan, can you help with that question? Are you talking about like to
I'm
transfer
not
her?
following your question all that well, so maybe you can just explain a little bit more. So you have an employee that worked for you and she quit?
She quit in September and she came back this week.
Okay, so she quit and she came back. And when she quit, did you submit a flag removal?
Yes.
Okay, and was she and then did you then submit for a transfer?
So we filled out, I talked to my licensor and then she sent, since it was less than 180 days, she just had me, I filled out this paper and I sent it over yesterday. Like just saying that she
In other
was
words,
here.
if you submitted the flag removal, then you probably have to get her re-fingerprinted
Okay,
because they removed her from your license.
okay, I'll send her to get it redone. Thank you.
Yeah. Had you had, so the 180-day transfer is your situation is a little unique, right? It's not the normal situation with the transfer. And please correct me if I'm misunderstanding. She worked for you, she quit, you submitted a flag removal. Once that flag removal is processed, they take that away. Now they wait 180 days to do that because if she, Chrissy, who do you, what's your company name? Just so I can.
Goddard School.
Goddard. Okay,
Mhm.
so she's at Goddard. If she went to KinderCare, and I'm just saying that as that's a pot, we all know who KinderCare is. Within 180 days of being leaving the company, she could have them submit for your background checks to be transferred to KinderCare. But in your situation, you submitted a flag removal, so you can contact your licensing specialist and see if they can contact the BUI team and say, hey, can we take back that flag removal? I don't know if they will. But and say, she came back, and can we not get this processed? I can't answer if they'll do that or not, but that's what would need to be done because there's no transfer at this point. You just submitted a flag removal, but you had her come back, right?
Mhm.
Who is your licensing specialist?
Kathleen.
Okay, so talk to Kathleen and see if she can contact BUI team, but I can't give that answer right now. But Kathleen, you can work that out with BIU.
Okay, thank you.
Did she go work somewhere else in between?
No, she stayed home with her son.
Okay.
And it hasn't been 180 days yet?
No.
Okay, so I can't answer whether they'll do that or not. Typically I would say that's not their protocol. We can always ask and be told no, which I would recommend, but I can't say whether they'll do that or not.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think you can move on, Susan.
Okay, thank you. Next slide.
So this one is mine, and I wasn't quite clear on the question. It talked about the question talked about why the licensing statuses are in pending all the time or something like that. Can somebody, whoever asked that question, can they clarify a little bit?
Brittany, I think what they were asking was that, so they have a program that moves locations every summer.
Uh-huh.
It's usually summer programs. And then they put in a change of address.
Mhm.
And by the time they get that and we start working on it, the summer's over. So they never really get licensed. It's always showing pending for a change of address.
Oh, well, I don't really have the answer for you. I think that every program that changes locations has to put in a change of location application, and the licensing specialist would come out when when they're notified, and they would make an appointment with you, and then they would come and schedule it. So if it's a summer program, I recommend getting those applications in early when you know that they're going to be open and where they're going to be open. And then I would recommend having your licensing specialist schedule it just before you guys open, and so that you can open within the next couple weeks after you get your scheduled visit done. Otherwise, if you're not licensed, then you're operating without a license, which is you're not allowed to do. So, and that would just be getting the only thing I would suggest on that situation is just getting your application in early and talking to your specialist pretty early when you guys know you're going to be moving to a new location. Does that make sense?
So I would clarify, Brittany, on the difference between a mobile SAC and a change and a SAC program that is changing locations, right? There's a difference there.
Yes, there is a difference, but the process is still the same.
So with a mobile childcare, mobile SACs can move day to day to different locations and operate in different places.
Mhm.
But building-based SAC program, if they're changing their address and then they need to put that application in and do the change, what Brittany was just describing. So just saying mobile programs is you really need to specify, are you like a mobile SAC program, which is different than a building-based SAC program, or so those are two different things.
Amanda, do you know who put this in and what kind of mobile program they're asking about?
I would have to research through my emails, but I can let you know.
Okay.
So how the questions posed makes a big difference on what the answer is.
For a mobile program that actually moves around day to day, that's when you and your specialist would need to get together and decide where your specialist needs to meet you the day that she does her regular supervisory visit. So if you are a mobile program that moves from place to place every day, you can just let your specialist know that where you're going to be, so she knows where to come up and do her supervisory visit with you. And she or he will probably contact you and ask you, hey, where are you going to be this week, or what's your schedule looking like for the next week or so? And then they'll do their regular inspection like they do all the other child cares.
So the email I have with this question is not as clear still. So I can reach out to this person and have them clarify it, and then I'll send it to you guys if you would like.
Sure.
Or they can send that to their specific licensing specialist, because they'll understand. Again, that's why we always request you guys to ask your more detailed questions to your individual licensing specialist, because they know your program and they know how you operate. And so they can make sure that they're giving you the right information. When you get a broad question that really isn't saying all the details, you tend to get the wrong answer, because we may be talking on two different pages.
And there's so many different types of licenses. We want to make sure which type of license they're really asking about. So that was some of the questions that we had. I've gotten a couple other ones that we'll go over. And Susan, maybe you could answer this one. So if someone is looking to hire somebody and they're doing a working interview, so where a new staff, but they're really not hired yet, would come into a classroom so that they could observe how she worked or he worked with children. Can they do that in the classroom? And what kind of requirements would they need to do prior? Would they just sign in as a volunteer for the day or a guest? Or I know they can't be counted in the staff ratio or anything like that. So I just wondered if you could talk about what you know about that.
Well, if they're so, you know, employees need to have everything in place from the date of hire. So if you've hired that person, then you need to have everything that's set out in rule from the date of hire. If you're bringing a volunteer into the classroom or somebody who you have not hired, and they're observing, I would have them sign as a volunteer. Make sure you have that documented. Make sure they are not part of ratio or capacity, and then go from there. But you would not be able to just pull somebody off the street and have them, you know, working with kids and not have background checks and not have them trained the way that they're supposed to be. So again, the devil is in the details and how you're using this person, on being authentic with it, and having the proper documentation in place. And I would look at, I mean, I'm not a lawyer and this is beyond my scope, but I would be really looking at labor law too. Not sure if labor law allows you to be doing a working interview. So again, not my role, but you may want to look into that before you're doing things like that.
Amanda, did that answer that for you?
Yeah, I did. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So, and Nicole, I'll let you answer this one. So if a parent doesn't approve for the child to have sunscreen, what's the school or a home provider supposed to do with that?
They need to protect the child in some way, I believe. Right? If that's correct. If they don't have they've not left permission, then I mean, they'd have to protect the child either by putting extra clothes or keeping them in the shade. I mean, I don't know the answer.
I can clarify this question a little bit. I don't want to, this might be touchy, so please forgive me, anybody on here that I might offend or anything. This is a question why this question came up. And I'm afraid to even ask it. Maybe I'll ask you guys separately, but
let's not throw anybody or anyone under the bus, but let's be direct and assume positive intent, right? We're all trying to help each other.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to make it a race thing. That's why I want to be clear and careful of how I'm wording it. But this is why this question came up. The family is of color and has asked that they don't put sunscreen on their kids because all the sunscreens that are made actually have a reaction on their child's body. And because of their darker complexion, oh my gosh, please don't hate me, everybody. I'm trying to find the correct words. The darker complexion, that they don't feel their child needs the sunscreen. So I just want to clarify for that owner that asked me what they should do in this situation.
I've had that come up where I've said that it doesn't matter, that, you know, you're required by law to protect the children from sun exposure, and so they need to provide something. So if that means a hat or something, they, you know, a sunscreen that doesn't make their skin react, or some way.
I would concur, Nicole, with that as well. They can do with clothing or other types of protection that can meet that. If the parents are saying, we refuse to have you put sunscreen on, they have the right to say that and do that. But they would need to work with alternative methods to provide sun's protection Um, everybody can get sunburned.
Anybody
So,
can get sunburn, especially in
yeah,
Colorado.
so,
And I might
just-
even suggest to them that they discuss that with their doctor too.
and maybe your nurse, I would maybe suggest involving your nurse consultant in those conversations.
Yeah.
With the family might be a good resource for that, and for that director, and maybe putting up some best practice guidelines, and we can see from our statewide nurse if there's any resources for directors for that, to help them with that. I'd be happy to reach out to our state, our state, the division nurse. You guys, I'm forgetting her name, if you want to help me. Teresa
Teresa?
Rapstein, with some alternative suggestions. And we can forward that to you.
Perfect. And then would it be just to cover everybody, because we're in a Happy Sue lifestyle nowadays, not saying they would, but maybe to have the center, right? We have discussed this plan since the family has stated they do not want sunscreen used on their child, and these were what was discussed. Going further, if these are something to that
I would
negation.
have them develop a plan.
Perfect. That's what I meant to say. Thank you.
Yeah, develop a plan with the family of what they agree to protect that child from, that may be limiting the amount of time outside, combined with clothing, with that protects you with UV.
And worst case
that they may
scenario is
have
they get a
to
doctor's
provide.
note to have the
Um,
doctor sign off on something to saying that, what the doctor wants them to do, worst case scenario to protect them.
Right.
Yeah,
Say
Yeah.
you need something in writing from their physician stating that they don't need to have anything on them and they're not bringing anything in to cover them for sunscreen too.
Perfect.
And,
Thank you.
but I also, if it's a 2-parent family, I would make sure that both parents sign that, just because sometimes maybe one parent agrees and one doesn't, and they don't want to set that up either, so.
Thank you. And thank you, Jessica, for your ideas too, since you've had the oh my goodness, the same situation. Geez Louise.
yeah,
Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
we're all here to help each other. We're not here to call each other out. Medical, but definitely have stuff in writing, right?
Yeah.
That's clear understanding with all parties.
So even though it's in writing, just to clarify, I mean, they don't have to have the sunscreen on, and if they're refusing to do longer sleeves, is it our responsibility just to make sure they're in the shade as much as possible?
You're gonna have, they have to be protected one way.
One
You're
way, so
gonna
they have to follow your
a
policy.
way to do that. So they're either gonna have to do the clothing or the sunscreen, or and you guys are gonna have to figure that out together.
I was just clarifying. 'cause you made us
I don't
stick
really
with
know
that.
if there's any alternatives other than that. We typically don't put sunscreen on infants under 1 because it absorbs into those chemicals absorb into their bloodstream, and can be toxic to them. So that's what, we do with children under 1. But you cannot just not have them have no protection. Specialists, do we all agree on that?
Yep. So the only other thing that came up was they asked if we could all talk about maybe what are some of the things that we see most often as violations and some of the things that we see most often as really good things. So Brittany, if you want to start that, we
Okay.
can all just go around and
Sure.
add.
So some of the things that are not necessarily most seen, but people don't think about as much are like the weed matting out on the playground or things like that, where it's a tripping hazard, or where just the tripping hazards out on the playground, like the weed matting or the spongy stuff that's on playgrounds. If it comes up and it's ripped and it's a tripping hazard, I think people don't see that a lot. And the other thing on the playground is the strangulation hazard. So like on your S hooks on swings, the gap between the platform and the slide, things like that are things I've seen. And then also the resilient material. Adams County, I think there's a lot of wind or something up there, because it seems like Adams County has a lot of lack of resilient material. And then the other thing I always see is just staff members not signing their health statements and then having their original health statement. So just making sure that your staff have their original health statement, and then that they're every year signing that updated statement saying they're still in good health. So those are the things I kind of see a lot, along with just training. So some of the good things I love seeing is I love it when the teachers are interacting and talking with the children. I love when artwork is posted on the walls. I think those are some pretty amazing things I like to see. And if the room is a little messy, I always have people say, oh, I'm sorry the room is so messy. But if the room is messy, that means they're playing and having a good time. So I like seeing kids having fun and being happy, and teachers playing with them and being silly. And I feel like sometimes we walk in and we make teachers nervous, and our intent isn't to make you nervous. It's to just check things out to make things safe. But if you're being silly, we will probably really enjoy that. So don't stop teaching just because we're in the room.
Nicole, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I've just recently noticed, I don't know why it's kind of missing or what has happened, but on enrollment forms, all of a sudden we're not asking for addresses anymore. So with parents' employment, we need their addresses or work addresses. If the parent isn't working, let's say that they're self-employed or at home, or they're a student, really the question is, where are they during the day? And so I think that's kind of clarifying that and not let parents just leave it blank. But for some reason, when I'm going over enrollment forms, that whole address section is taken out, and you guys are just getting phone numbers and work numbers. But I'm missing a lot of times addresses for the doctor, dentist, and hospital of choice too. So I don't know where the addresses went over the years, but make sure that you have those addresses for those on enrollment forms. As far as like the walkthrough stuff, I think people forget, like shaving cream is kind of like one of those things, like adult scissors. It's a teacher directed activity. Shaving cream does say keep out of the reach of children on it, but it's a great sensory activity. And so it's something that can't be within reach of children, but as long as it's a teacher directed and you're down there right with the kids when they're using it, it's a great, like I said, sensory activity. I'm trying to think what else.
With
That
the
was-
shaving cream, can any age use it, like toddlers too, if the teacher is there, or is it just 3 and up?
Well, I would say 3 and up, because they're going to put it in their mouth for sure. And, it's not that good for them to be eating
Right.
shaving cream. So, with
And
the
I would
outdoor stuff,
recommend finding a shaving cream that doesn't say keep out of reach of children. So you don't want the ones that are full of chemicals. You
Yep.
can get ones that, or maybe even use a product that is safe to be ingested. Maybe,
Cool.
whipped cream instead of
Mhm.
shaving cream or something like that. So I would highly recommend not using products with kids that say keep out of reach of children. The reason why that's on there is because they don't want children using that.
Right. And they do have one at Lakeshore that doesn't have keep out of reach of children. So
I forgot to mention too that googly eyes or pom poms or pins
Foam
or
stickers.
little hooks in the hallway where toddlers go, they can't be where toddlers or infants are. So all chokables and staples can't be there either. So I would just watch out for staples. If you do staple, put some tape over it. I wouldn't put googly eyes or anything on any place where toddlers or infants are going. And then of course, glitter, don't use glitter. And water beads are also not allowed anymore. So if you have those, toss them.
And that's for any age.
And correct me if I'm wrong, that's a federal recall. So
Yeah.
those are now illegal. Throw them away.
Tiffany had a question in the chat box. I know we're over time, so if anybody needs to leave, go ahead, right ahead. We'll have this recording up within the next couple of days on ECPEC's website. But if you all want to stay, you're more than welcome to stay.
Yeah.
And then
The dentist is required on the enrollment form as well. Name, address, phone number.
Yep.
And then with the hospital, it's okay if anyone writes the closest. Most of the time parents say that they're like, oh, the closest, but really, I mean, Children's Hospital is okay too. If you kind of just mark that as, even like I've seen where it's like, is it okay to take your child to nearest hospital or Children's Hospital? And then parents just check the box and say, sign on underneath saying yes. But see, is that everything for questions? Yeah.
Susan, did you have anything to add on violations that you see or positive things that you've been seeing? You're on mute. You're on mute. There
I know. I'm trying to get there. Thank you. Sometimes you can't shut me up. Sometimes you can't turn me on. It's one or the other, right? I see wonderful things in all my programs. You guys do a fantastic job. I really appreciate all the hard work you do. Wonderful teachers. A lot of you have received funding through the state to and I have tried to comment on that, on all the wonderful materials that I'm seeing in the classroom for children. I'm seeing teachers interact with the kiddos. I always really try to stress, and I know it's difficult because you feel like I'm talking at two sides of my mouth. I'm asking you for things when I come in to do my inspection, but I'm also hoping to see you do your first job, which is watching those kids. So when you're comfortable enough to do your job, which is really watching those kids while I'm doing my visit, I love that the best, just to see how you interact and how the kiddos interact with you. I try to interact with those kiddos as well. I try not to be too disruptive. I know it can be we can be very disruptive when we come into your centers and to your homes. But I also don't want to ignore any little child that comes up to me. So I really appreciate all my providers. You do excellent work. A violation, just to remind you, I know my providers know I say this a lot. It's not for me or any of us to wag our finger at you, even though sometimes it can feel that way. We know that. Really, it is a checklist of a safety checklist of things that just need to be corrected. It does not indicate you're good. It does not indicate that you're bad. We know you have hard jobs. We have hard jobs, but I think you all are do incredible work, and I'm so thankful for what you do for Colorado children and families. We really do appreciate you very much. And a licensing visit is just a point in time, and one day to the next can be two far different things. One day we can have a horrible day. I can have a horrible day any given day. I can be off my A game any day. You as well. We all recognize that. So, but we are all here to do our best and to help each other.
Right.
Charlotte.
Yes, can I just clarify one of the statements Nicole Bettis just made? I was under the impression that like in your emergency log, you have to have home provider like a doctor, hospital choice. You have to pick your hospital. But dentist, I was under the impression you did not have to. However, all my families have been very great with all the social media and all the great resources out there. Almost all my families have that, but that you do have those few that do not have a dentist. I did not know that dentist was a mandatory thing, especially with some students not having any teeth. So can you just clarify that piece? for me really fast?
Can't think what I think it's a pedontist or whatever. So they're saying that even, pediatric 2-year-olds, their first tooth, they really should start seeing a dentist to make sure that everything looks good and that they're brushing their teeth right. But yes, it is something that's always been in rules and regs on this is the admission forms. This is what the stuff you need to ask parents and that you need to obtain from parents. So
Great.
but
I think Amanda needs us to get off, and so we'll go ahead and end, but you guys are always welcome to call or email any of your licensing specialists, and we'll get the answers back to you. And I want to just thank everybody for showing up today. So thank you.
Thank you to everybody too. We appreciate the questions and all of you being on here answering them, and how everybody was receptive and very open to all the questions. Thank you. And thank you for going over time. We appreciate everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.